Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about shims. So, shims is pretty much a very thin piece of metal, or it could be plastic, depending on where you have it. But a lot of times, it's going to be metal. And these can come in different shapes. You could have circular donut looking shapes, you could have a disc without a hole in the middle, you could have different slots based on if where it fits, like a U-shaped slot or a horseshoe. These are other slotted shapes you might see, or you could just get a shim stock where it's just a flat piece of material. And sometimes you'll get colored ones too, where it's in the form of like a little notepad of different thicknesses, and you could just hole punch out the size that you need. But the main concept of the shim is that um, it's usually like a couple of thou thickness and is for fine adjustments inside your assembly. So sometimes you might have maybe there's two parts that needs to line up and you want to have good alignment. So you'll put a shim on one of the pieces to get the exact height that you want in case there's some machining imprecisions that happen. Or if you have gears in your assembly and you want to have the gears line up properly, you could add a shim to the contact between the gear and maybe a bearing. So if we look at the ring shim here, you could see there's a couple of different ones. You can see that if we click on one of them and take a look, okay, you can see that this shim here is 0.001 inch and then plus or minus 0.000 3 zeros and 3. So we can see that this has a very tight tolerance and it essentially adds 1 thou of thickness to your design. So it's for very small adjustments in your design. So sometimes you could also have several of these shims stack up. So if you need like 3 thou, you might have three of these rings. Okay, so let's take a look at it. Go ahead and download one. Did not like that download. Let me try again. Okay. So we can see this is a very thin sheet of, in this case, it's a 3/16 stainless steel shim. And based on the shaft that you're using, you could choose the right size. So this one's for a 0.125. Okay, so just as an example, if I have, let's see if we can find a small gear. I'm gonna open up a new tab. So let's find one with a shaft diameter of 0.125. So let's say we're dealing with this gear. I'm gonna download this. And let's actually just make a plate. So let's have a part here. And on the top plane, I'm just gonna make a square plate that's maybe 3 inches by 2. And I'll make this maybe a 0.125 thickness. And I'll call this a gear plate. And in the middle, I'm gonna create a hole and I'll dimension this to be 0.125. Extrude cut through all. I don't care about the location right now. This plate actually looks pretty big. I'm gonna shrink it down a bit. Make it 1 inch and maybe 0.5. And then we can move our hole location to somewhere more appropriate. And while we're at it, why not let's just center it. Make this a midpoint. Okay, so this is our gear plate. And if we insert the components, we could put in our gear plate. And then we can have our shim. And then we have our gear. I closed it off too fast. Okay. So now here's your gear. Now let's assume there's a bearing here. I'm not gonna put in the bearing right now, but let's say, you mounted this gear to this hole, and then we measure the top of the surface to this, and we find that the distance is a little bit too short. Okay, so I'm gonna mate it directly for now. But let's say there's another gear on the side. Yeah, let me just add another gear to this assembly for the sake of completion. And we could take a product detail look at this, and the pitch diameter is 0.25. So that means our other circle should be zero point 0.5. But actually, in this specific example, because we align it right and left, it doesn't really matter. Um, for a bevel gear, it might be more sensitive, but let's just, for the sake of example, let's say that we want the heights to match up. Then this may be a candidate to add another gear under, or another shim underneath. So actually, we'll just show it with one gear, since it doesn't really make sense to have these two line up, so we won't care about that. But let's say we needed a specific height. So right now is 3.315, and for some reason your height is not quite what you want, and you need it to be just like 1 thou higher. So that's where the shim would come in. You could add a shim here, and then you can make it concentric, and then now the gear would be sitting, the shim would be sandwiched in between. So now our new distance is going to be 0.316. So that's what I mean by the fine micro adjustments you can have in your assembly. And if we look at it, you're going to see like a small sliver of material in between, and that's where the shim would go. Okay, so in the future, if there's any need for fine adjustments in your assembly, you could go ahead and throw in a shim. This one is already the right size you have, but like we mentioned earlier, you could get a sheet of shim stock and then find the right thickness that you need and do a profile cut of the shape that you need for your assembly. All right, so if you found this video helpful, give a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.